The Radio City Rockettes and their Christmas Spectacular might be one of the most celebrated icons of Christmas in America, besides Jolly St. Nick himself.
Quite incredible to think that that can be passed down through history and remain something that's so relevant today.
Originating on the banks of the Mississippi River in St. Louis, the troupe was known in its early days as the Missouri Rockets. But the women would get their big break when they were invited to perform in New York City at the Roxy Theater. It was there that they became the Roxyettes and caught the attention of officials with Radio City Music Hall. They would go on to perform their first show to a sold-out crowd of just over 6,000 people on December 27, 1932. It's a venue they still perform in today as the Radio City Rockettes. For decades, they would enjoy a stellar run in the Big Apple, but they weren't done with Missouri. They would eventually return and become part of the Branson show boom of the 1990s. Performing just down the street from Mr. Christmas himself, Andy Williams, the Rockettes performed 3 shows a day to sold-out crowds of 4,000 people at the majestic Grand Palace. The palace was built by the Hershin family to be Branson's crown jewel theater, and starting each November, officials would transform it into the White River version of Radio City Music Hall. Local resident Renee Johnson knows this better than anyone. Performing with the Rockettes during their Branson run, she says you could hardly tell the difference between the Grand Palace and the North Pole.
Oh, it was magical. You would step into the Grand Palace, and there was this brilliant staircase and a giant chandelier hanging from the middle that was completely lit. And they had these little kiosks that were roasting nuts for Christmas, and the smell permeated every facet of the downstairs. It was just magic. It was just Christmas.
The Rockettes apparently chose Branson as their home away from home because of the city itself. While vastly different from the buzzing streets of Manhattan, officials at Radio City supposedly loved how the community of Branson worked together, supporting one another.
Radio City, with the living nativity, a hallmark of the Christmas Spectacular, found that our guests and our leaders and our community all shared some good values. And they wanted to be here because they wanted some of what we were doing right here in Branson.
It was so beautifully Norman Rockwell, and it was so family oriented, and it was so magical already that it was such an easy pleasure just to step into it and be a part of it. We were thrilled.
Some of their most popular acts from 1932 would be performed in Branson, from the iconic Toy Soldier number to the Living Nativity, and eventually new acts were added. The choreography was pristine, and the Grand Palace was even able to recreate some of the production secrets from Radio City, like inserting tiny microphones in the heels of the girls' shoes to make sure every tap could be heard from the front to the back. Even the choreography was just like what you would see on stage in New York City. Julie Branham performed with the Rockettes in Branson, and today is the lead choreographer of the Christmas Spectacular show in New York. One of the hardest gigs in show business, it's much more complicated than you might think.
It's always a puzzle. Our stage here at Radio City is like a giant piece of graph paper. So every 2 feet there's a line or a number, and it's color-coded: red, green, blue, white lines with dots, with numbers. And when we all do our job, you get that feeling and you feel it all come together. When the kicks are right on and really together, when our lines are perfectly straight, you know, it takes everybody doing their best work to make that happen. But when you're up on stage and you're in it, you feel that magic too.
While the Rockettes ended their legendary run in Branson in 2003, Christmas time in Branson is still a beloved tradition, and so is seeing the Rockettes.
Julie, what are you most excited about with the Rockettes in 2022?
I am, I think, most excited to get back into rehearsal, get the show up and running, and everyone to stay healthy and happy and let us strut our stuff, and seeing the crowds here and happy faces.